I just had a thought. I'm on a run right now, doing Zen 2 training, so that's why I'm out of breath. But I just visualized myself thinking about how the kingdom of God is in warfare, that our God is God of war, meditating upon this aspect of God's nature and his kingdom. Reality is, you don't fight physical, flesh and blood powers against spiritual rulers, authorities, principalities, spirits of evil in the heavenly realms. And I'm visualizing just as like a commander would strategically and tactfully analyze and outline the points in a war in a battlefield and placing certain soldiers into here and here. I thought about my title as a conqueror of kingdoms. And I thought, I'm on the offensive, not on the defensive. In a war, there's defensive troops, there's walls, there's fortresses, there's refuge, there's homes. Then you have what's beyond the walls. Just like AOT, it's the scouts versus the military police, right? Military police already defend, but it's already been established. They are reinforcing the kingdom within the walls. But the scouts, the one with brave enough souls to venture beyond the walls, to fight the offensive, to fight for the kingdom expansion and for truth and for humanity. That's what I believe my calling is. And I was reviewing earlier in the week, after me and a friend were talking about the conflicts of homosexuality. And it's present in church. What does the Bible say? Is like we were wrestling with the question, is homosexuality a sin? And I just thought, wrestling with this question is level one. It's already trying to defending a truth that is so common sense. It's like the enemy is pushing back our forces, and then we're just trying to wail on the defensive about questions that are so rudimentary, so elementary. If I'm being very blunt and honest, we should know if our hearts were the heart of God's, these simple truths and realities wouldn't be plaguing our minds and hearts and putting these barriers. But the enemy has took this entire generation in the last few decades. He's placed a foothold inside of our kingdom. He's breached the walls, just like the colossal. He's breached the walls and he's infiltrated these little lies and are questioning about sexuality and the New World Agenda. There are so many things happening in the world. We're taking steps back. Why are we advancing forward to fight on the offensive to expand the kingdom of God? And I thought of this podcast that I listened after that day. I was listening to this podcast with Michael Knowles and another pastor. He has a really good YouTube channel about biblical masculinity, and they were debating two pastors from California it was about the LGBTQ community and about marriage, different debates about that topic. And I was just listening to maybe the first 10 to 20 minutes about what the other pastor had to say. And I just saw how fallen our moral logic has become. And like simple, fundamental common sense. They were talking about how he was just beating around the bush about how two men can have babies without the intervention of a woman. And then Michael Knowles was like, so you're saying that kids can be produced from two men? And you're trying to argue, it's like we don't need women in marriage, because they're talking about like covenantal marriage, about how God created man and woman to become one flesh, etc. The man he was speaking nonsense. I was like, how has it come to this? The enemy is infiltrating the walls. And thanks be to God for those brave souls to even put that on their platforms. Michael Knowles and the other pastor, I kind of found them as like foot soldiers defending the walls, the second layer of the wall, right? Think about Wall Maria, Wall Rose, and Wall Sina. There are like 3 layers, right? The enemy has infiltrated out of reach to the wall. We have like foot soldiers, second layer, and like think about like the kingdom. It's literally like kingdom, and like within our walls is our home and our church and our sanctuaries and the people of God who, women and children who are, passively developing a relationship with God and like solving internal conflicts. Don't get me wrong, it's not like what's going on within the walls isn't important. Just like how political issues, the familial issues, and issues within the church, that's what's going on within the walls. But this is my perspective, and I think this is my heart as a warrior and as a soldier. Is like, I need to expand. I need to get outside the walls. I need to know what's beyond the walls and discover the truth and expand the truth and save humanity, not for my own righteousness, but through the righteousness of Christ and his finished work, living in his grace. Oh my gosh, I get excited about this. I get excited about venturing beyond the walls, expanding the kingdom of God. This is what my deep core purpose is. And this analogy about being on the offensive versus the offensive, I want to be the sword of one of the swords of the kingdom to literally cut down the lies and fight the encampments of that area beyond the walls where Marley plants their ships and it's where they set the Titans. My strategy is let's just go to that point, destroy the strongholds that have been built there, destroy the armies that have been encamped, surround us to continually feed us these lies and just kill it from the root. And I want to go beyond the walls, like just how scouts cross the sea into a whole nother land to resolve those kinds of conflicts, big political conflicts that are so much what I believe more impactful and crucial. And the scale of those political, like it was the fate of the Eldian people, the fate of God's people has already been written in the book Revelation. I'm not trying to change history or play God and fight for the fate of Christians. I understand that's already been written, and it's just an analogy, right? I'm not saying it's an exact parallel, but it's an analogy to my heart to be a scout regiment, to be a warrior, to be a conqueror of kingdoms, to fight and push back the kingdom of darkness. Well, there's, all of our saints who are defending what God calls them and predestines to be. I think that's the ultimate story, is that God, just like how each individual character at AOT have these individual purposes and missions and callings within their individual regiments and groups, and the greater story of all things, God has appointed us with individual missions and callings and purposes to expand the kingdom of God and fight. That's not an analogy I really like. I'm tying this to AOT too. I think that's it's a cool thought experiment, but nonetheless, that's my insight.